The smoke-filled cantina on Kepler Station buzzed with the familiar sounds of off-duty soldiers unwinding after another rotation. Zephyrian ale flowed freely as tales grew taller with each passing hour. At a corner table, a group of galactic coalition forces had gathered around their newest entertainment, reading human mythology from captured data cores. "Listen to this one," wheezed Corpex, his forearms gesticulating wildly as his translator struggled with the ancient Earth text. A human named Hercules supposedly held up the entire sky while someone fetched golden apples. The insectoid soldier's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. "Ridiculous," chimed in Veltar, her crystalline features sparkling with amusement. "These soft-skinned bipeds think one of their kind could support planetary weight? Our gravity calculations show that's physically impossible." The group erupted in chittering, buzzing, and harmonized laughter. Humans had joined the Galactic Coalition only recently, and their integration had been bumpy. Most species viewed them as weaklings, soft, short-lived creatures who somehow stumbled into space travel despite their obvious physical limitations. "Oh, here's another good one," Corpex continued, scrolling through the files. "Something called Samson, who supposedly brought down an entire temple by pushing on 2 pillars. His primary set of eyes rolled dramatically. The structural engineering alone makes this absurd." Wait, interrupted Thekmor, his reptilian tail swishing with excitement. "Read the one about the human who fought a sea monster. Something called Kraken." As Corpex searched through the files, none of them noticed the figure in the shadowy corner booth, a scarred veteran whose weathered features bore the marks of countless battles. Commander Vex'hai sat silently, nursing his drink while listening to the mockery with growing unease. The legendary war hero had commanded coalition forces for over 3 decades, earning respect across a dozen species. His tactical brilliance had won battles that others deemed unwinnable. But lately, these discussions about human mythology stirred something deep in his memory, something he'd tried to forget. "Found it," Corpex announced. "A human warrior named Odysseus apparently wandered space for 10 years, fighting monsters and gods. The biological requirements alone. Enough." The single word cut through the cantina noise like a plasma blade. Every head turned toward the corner booth. Commander Vex'hai stood slowly, his massive frame casting long shadows in the dim light. His 6 eyes fixed on the group of junior officers with an intensity that made them instinctively straighten their postures. "Commander," Corpex stammered, his antennae drooping. "We were just reviewing alien cultural files. For educational purposes, of course." Vex'hai approached their table with measured steps. His reputation preceded him, the hero of the Proxima campaign, the butcher of the asteroid fields, the only commander to ever successfully coordinate a retreat from the Void Swarm. "Educational," he repeated, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "And what exactly are you learning from these myths?" The junior officers exchanged nervous glances. Veltar, the boldest of the group, ventured an answer. "That humans have vivid imaginations, sir. Their fictional accounts of individual combat prowess are creatively exaggerated." Something flickered across Vex'hai's scarred features, an expression the others couldn't quite interpret. He gestured to an empty chair, and the group reluctantly made room for their commander. "Fictional accounts," he mused, settling his considerable bulk into the reinforced seat. "Tell me, Officer Veltar, how long have you served in the Coalition?" 12 standard years, sir." "And in those 12 years, have you ever served alongside human forces?" The crystalline officer's features dimmed slightly. "No, sir. Humans are typically assigned to support roles." "Support roles." Vex'hai's mandibles clicked, a sound that could indicate either amusement or irritation among his species. "Of course. And the rest of you?" A chorus of similar responses followed. None of the junior officers had ever served with humans in combat situations. Their exposure to humanity came through briefings, technical manuals, and apparently captured cultural data. "I see." Vex'hai leaned back, his eyes growing distant. "Then perhaps it's time you learned about the real humans. Not the myths and legends, but the truth behind them. The cantina had grown quieter around their table. Other patrons, recognizing the famous commander, began to gather within listening distance. Word spread quickly through the station's communication networks, and more soldiers began filtering into the establishment. "Sir," Corpex ventured, his voice uncertain. Vex'hai's gaze snapped back to the present. "You want to know about human myths? About warriors who perform impossible feats?" His voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but somehow carried to every corner of the now silent cantina. "Then let me tell you about the Battle of Terran Outpost 7. Let me tell you about the day I learned that human myths aren't mythology at all." "It was 18 standard years ago," Commander Vex'hai began, his voice carrying the weight of memory. "The Hegemony War was at its peak, and the Coalition was losing badly. Their bioships could adapt to our weapons faster than we could develop new ones. Entire sectors were falling weakly. The gathered soldiers leaned in, hanging on every word. Even veteran officers who had heard countless war stories recognized something different in their commander's tone. A haunted quality they'd never heard before. I was a captain then, commanding the 47th Tactical Squadron aboard the Dreadnought Resolute. Our assignment was simple: evacuate a failing research outpost before the Hegemony's biofleet arrived. Standard extraction. In and out within 6 hours. Vex'hai paused, taking a long drink from his cup. The amber liquid seemed to steady him before he continued. The outpost was a joint operation, Coalition scientists working alongside a small contingent of human researchers. 17 total personnel. When we arrived, the Hegemony bioships were already in system, 3 hours out and closing fast. He gestured with one of his secondary arms, drawing tactical positions in the air. The outpost was built into an asteroid, mining and research combined. 1 landing pad, minimal defenses. Our extraction should have taken 30 minutes. But when we docked— "What happened, sir?" Veltar whispered. The research team had made a breakthrough. Something about Hegemony bioship adaptation matrices. They needed another 4 hours to complete the data transfer, information that could turn the tide of the war. But we didn't have 4 hours. We had maybe 2 before the biofleet reached us. The commander's 6 eyes focused on different members of his audience as he spoke, ensuring each felt the weight of his words. "I made the command decision. We would defend the outpost for as long as possible, then retreat with whatever data we could salvage. I had 47 Coalition Marines against what our sensors identified as a Hegemony assault swarm. Approximately 300 bioconstructs plus support organisms." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Those odds were impossible even for elite Coalition forces. The human contingent consisted of 6 researchers and 1 military liaison, a sergeant named Marcus Chen. When I explained our situation, Chen volunteered his people for combat support. I almost laughed. Vex'hai's mandibles clicked ruefully. Humans with their soft skin and fragile bones, fighting adapted bioconstructs. It seemed like sending children against starved predators. "What changed your mind?" asked Thekmore. Chen looked me straight in the eyes, all 6 of them, and said something I'll never forget. "Commander, you don't know us yet, but you will." The cantina had become completely silent except for Vex'hai's voice and the distant hum of station systems. The first wave hit us 2 hours later. 30 bioconstructs, each one perfectly adapted for close combat. Razor claws, acid blood, reactive armor plating. They came through the mining tunnels while aerial forms attacked the main entrance. Vex'hai stood, beginning to pace as the memories took hold. "My Marines performed admirably. We established killing fields, coordinated fire zones, proper tactical formations. We killed 15 bioconstructs in the first engagement and lost only 3 soldiers. By the book? Textbook perfect." "That sounds successful, sir." "It was. Until the constructs adapted." His voice grew grim. "The second wave came an hour later. 60 constructs, but now they moved differently. Faster. They'd developed countermeasures to our weapons, resistance to our tactics. We lost 12 Marines and barely held our positions. The pacing stopped, and Vex'hai's gaze grew distant. That's when I saw him. Saw who? Commander? Marcus Chen. While my Marines were regrouping and adjusting our fire patterns, this human sergeant was moving through the combat zone like something from their mythology. I need you to understand something, Vex'hai continued, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. I've seen combat across 17 different planetary types. I've fought alongside Corvan berserkers, Thexani honor guards, even crystalline assault matrices. I thought I understood the limits of biological combat effectiveness. He paused, his scarred features reflecting the cantina's dim lighting. Marcus Chen taught me I understood nothing. The commander began moving around the table, his steps measured and deliberate. The third wave was the worst yet. Over 100 bioconstructs, now fully adapted to our standard weapons and tactics. They moved like liquid death through our defensive positions. My remaining Marines, down to 22 effective soldiers, were being systematically overwhelmed. How bad was it, sir? Corpex asked, his antennae twitching nervously. Bad enough that I was preparing to order full retreat. We'd hold for another 10 minutes, evacuate with whatever partial data we had, and call it acceptable losses. Vex'hai's 6 eyes focused on different points around the room. That's when Chen approached me. The cantina crowd pressed closer, even veteran officers leaning in to catch every word. He was carrying weapons I'd never seen before, some kind of modified plasma rifle and what looked like an ancient projectile weapon. His human companions were with him, all armed with similar equipment. Chen said, "Commander, give us 60 minutes. Just 60 minutes, and we'll buy you the time you need." 60 minutes? Veltar's crystalline features flickered with disbelief. Against 100 adapted bioconstructs? That's exactly what I said. Vex'hai's mandibles clicked in what might have been bitter amusement. Chen just smiled. Humans do this thing where they bare their teeth when pleased, still unsettling, and said, "Sir, you've been fighting them like soldiers, but we remember how to be warriors." The commander stopped pacing and faced his audience directly. What I witnessed over the next hour shattered every assumption I had about combat, about biology, about what was physically possible. He gestured toward the datapad still displaying human mythology. "You mock their stories of Hercules holding up the sky?" I watched Marcus Chen grab a 2-ton blast door that had been torn from its hinges and use it as a shield while advancing through concentrated bioacid fire. The metal was dissolving around him, but he kept moving forward. Stunned silence greeted the statement. "You laugh at Samson bringing down a temple?" I saw Dr. Sarah Kim, a xenobiologist weighing maybe 60 kilograms, punch through a bioconstruct's adaptive armor plating with her bare hands. The construct was designed to withstand plasma cannon fire. Vex'hai's voice grew stronger, more intense. Their mythology speaks of warriors who don't know when to quit, who fight beyond reason, beyond possibility. I thought these were primitive fantasies. I was wrong. "But Commander," Thekmore interjected, his reptilian features creased with confusion. The physical laws," Vex'hai interrupted, "don't account for what humans call adrenaline, or their pack-bonding instincts, or their absolute refusal to accept defeat even when mathematically inevitable." He moved to the viewport, staring out at the stars. Chen and his people didn't just fight the bioconstructs. They hunted them. Through the mining tunnels, across the processing floors, even outside on the asteroid surface in vacuum suits. They turned our defensive action into an aggressive campaign. How? The question came from multiple voices simultaneously. They fought like their myths describe, not as individuals but as something greater. Chen would charge directly into overwhelming odds, drawing enemy fire, while his teammates flanked from impossible angles. When Dr. Kim was cornered by 3 constructs, she didn't retreat. She triggered a mining charge and used the explosion to launch herself at the nearest enemy. Vex'hai turned back to face the crowd. But the moment that changed everything, the moment I truly understood what humans are capable of, came near the end of the battle. 53 minutes into the hour Chen had promised me, Vex'hai continued, everything went wrong. The commander's voice carried a weight that made every listener lean forward unconsciously. A hegemony bioship had broken through our orbital defenses and was positioning for direct assault on the outpost. Not constructs this time, a full bioship designed to consume entire installations. We had maybe 5 minutes before it began liquefying the asteroid around us. He paused, seeming to gather strength for what came next. My remaining Marines were exhausted, our heavy weapons depleted. The human researchers had given us the hour they promised, but it wasn't enough. The data transfer was at 93%, still 7 minutes from completion. "What did you do, sir?" Corpex whispered. "I ordered immediate evacuation. Full retreat, abandon the mission. Save who we could." Vex'hai's expression darkened. That's when Marcus Chen made a decision that still haunts my tactical analysis programs. The commander moved to stand directly beside the table where this conversation had begun, resting one massive hand on the surface. Chen looked at that approaching bioship, a thing the size of a small moon, covered in weapon ports and consumption appendages, and he said, "Commander, humans have a saying. The only easy day was yesterday. Today we make our own luck." "Surely he didn't mean," Veltar began. "He meant exactly what you think he meant." Vex'hai's 6 eyes fixed on her with startling intensity. Chen and his remaining team, for humans against a bioship, prepared to buy us the final 7 minutes. The cantina had become so quiet that the station's life support systems sounded like thunderstorms. I've analyzed this engagement 17,000 times since it happened. By every tactical simulation, every combat algorithm, every strategic analysis program in coalition databases, what those humans did was impossible. "Tell us," someone called from the back of the crowd. "They hijacked a mining transport and loaded it with every explosive device on the station. Then Chun did something I still don't understand. He contacted the bioship directly." "Contacted it?" Thekmore's tail had stopped swishing entirely. "Humans have this concept they call psychological warfare." Chun transmitted directly to the bioship's command consciousness and challenged it. Not tactically, not strategically, but personally. He told the bioconstruct that humans had been killing things like it since before they left their homeworld. Vex'hai began pacing again, his movements sharp and agitated. The bioship responded as any rational organism would. It ignored the challenge and continued its approach. But then Chun did something that changed my understanding of warfare forever. What did he do? He kept his word. The commander stopped pacing and faced his audience with an expression none of them had ever seen before. Something approaching awe. That mining transport, loaded with explosives, accelerated directly toward the bioship. Not a kamikaze run, those can be calculated, defended against. This was something else entirely. Which was? Chun had turned the transport into a guided missile, but he wasn't guiding it with computers or AI systems. He was manually piloting, making real-time adjustments to avoid the bioship's defensive systems, while his teammates coordinated targeting data from the transport's mining sensors. The crowd stirred restlessly. This level of coordination required computational power beyond organic capabilities. "Sir," Corpex ventured, "human reaction times aren't fast enough for that kind of precision flying." "That's what I thought too." Vex'hai's mandibles clicked repeatedly. "But I was watching the sensor feeds." Chun wasn't reacting to the bioship's defenses. He was predicting them. Somehow, this human sergeant was running tactical projections in his head that matched our best AI systems. Impossible. So I thought, until I remembered something from their mythology files. The commander gestured toward the datapad. Humans have stories about warriors who enter battle states where time seems to slow down, where they can see enemy movements before they happen. I always assumed these were metaphorical. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. They're not metaphorical. The mining transport impacted the bioship's primary consumption array at exactly the right angle to penetrate its adaptive armor. Vex'hai continued, his voice carrying notes of wonder even after 18 years. The explosion didn't just damage the bioship. It triggered a cascade failure in its biological systems. The assembled soldiers hung on every word. their earlier mockery of human mythology now seeming foolish and distant. But that's not the impossible part, the commander added, his 6 eyes scanning the crowd. The impossible part is that Chen's team survived. Survived! Veltar's crystalline features flickered with confusion. How could they survive a collision with a bioship? Because they weren't on the transport when it hit. Stunned silence greeted this revelation. At the last possible moment, when the transport was already inside the bioship's defensive perimeter, Chen and his team used the mining suit's emergency ejection systems to launch themselves back toward the asteroid. Through space, in vacuum, while the bioship was firing everything it had at them. Vex'hai moved to the viewport again, staring out at the stars as if seeing that long-ago battle. I watched for humans in basic mining suits navigate through weapons fire that was designed to stop armored spacecraft. They bounced off asteroid debris, used gravity wells to adjust their trajectories, and somehow managed to time their approach so they landed on our station just as the bioship's cascade failure began. That's... Thekmor's reptilian features showed complete bewilderment. That level of spatial calculation, the timing required, is described perfectly in their mythology, Vex'hai finished. Stories of heroes who leap between floating islands, who navigate impossible mazes, who always land exactly where they need to be. The commander turned back to face his audience. The data transfer completed with 47 seconds to spare. The bioship's cascade failure took out 2 other hegemony vessels and forced the entire fleet to retreat. The intelligence we gathered that day led directly to the Coalition's victory at Proxima 6. He paused, letting the implications sink in. But more importantly, I learned something that changed how I approach every military situation. Human mythology isn't mythology. It's instruction manual. Sir, Corpex's voice was barely audible. Every story they tell about impossible heroes, about warriors who don't know when to quit, about individuals who can change the course of entire battles. These aren't fantasies. They're cultural memory. Humans tell these stories to remind themselves what they're capable of. Vex'hai moved back to the table, picking up the datapad displaying human myths. Hercules holding up the sky? I've seen humans carry burdens that should have crushed them. Samson bringing down a temple? I've watched humans destroy installations designed to withstand siege warfare. Odysseus wandering for years, fighting monsters and gods. His mandibles clicked in what was definitely amusement now. I've served alongside Marcus Chen for 15 years since that day. Trust me, humans don't just fight monsters and gods. They win. The cantina remained silent for a long moment as the implications of the commander's story settled over the crowd. What happened to Sergeant Chen, sir? Veltar asked quietly. He's Admiral Chen now. Commands the 8th Fleet, humanity's first all-human deep space combat unit. Vex'hai's expression showed something approaching pride. Still doesn't know when to quit. Still makes impossible things happen through sheer bloody-minded determination. The commander set down the datapad and addressed the crowd directly. Here's what you need to understand about humans. All of you. They're not the weakest species in the Coalition. They're the most dangerous. Not because of their technology or their weapons, but because they refuse to accept limitations. He gestured toward the mythology files. Every other species in the galaxy looks at an impossible situation and calculates the odds of success. Humans look at an impossible situation and start figuring out how to make it possible. That's not a character flaw. It's their greatest strength. Vex'hai stood to leave, but paused at the cantina entrance. You want to know the real difference between human mythology and everyone else's folklore? Other species tell stories about gods and monsters to explain why certain things can't be done. Humans tell stories about gods and monsters to remind themselves that everything can be overcome if you're willing to pay the price. As the legendary commander disappeared into the station corridors, the assembled soldiers sat in contemplative silence. The datapad remained on the table, its screen still displaying human mythology, but now those impossible stories seemed less like fantasy and more like prophecy. In the quiet that followed, Corpex reached for the datapad with trembling hands. His voice, when he finally spoke, carried none of its earlier mockery. Maybe, he said quietly, We should study these more carefully, for educational purposes. The others nodded silently, understanding that their view of humanity, and the nature of possibility itself, had been forever changed. After all, as Admiral Chen had once said, humans don't just fight monsters and gods. They win.